So chapter 10 is on file systems and storage. So here we will cover the fundamentals of file systems. So what are the characteristics and why we need file systems, and so how the files are organized inside the operating system, and also what are the different file systems that is available for different operating systems. And we'll see different ways of structuring and how the operating systems manage these files, and then the storage, because files need to be stored. So in storage, we will see what type of storage that we can use and what type of retrieval mechanisms are available in the operating systems. So the file concept, when we consider a file, so there should be a place to physically store them, and also this should be mapped into the operating system where it can easily find the file and do necessary operations, right? And then either read or write in the secondary storage, right? So so when it comes to logical address space for files, so the files are maintained in the logical address space, so which would be continuous. And the different file types we have would be data files, where it can be numeric, characters, binary, and so on, and also programs. So application programs are also available in the operating system, right? So that is also available in the storage. So there are different file types. The two main categories we can identify as data and programs. So it has different characteristics. So a file will have typical attributes like this, as you can see, a name for the file, human readable, an identifier, a unique tag or a number, file ID, so which will be used by the operating system to identify the file, and the type of the file. So different file types are supported by different operating systems. So therefore file type is important, and operating system should be able to recognize the file to do the task, do execution, or to read write. So the operating system should know this file type, and also the location on the device or location on the storage, and the size of the file, and then protection, who's the owner and who's having the read write permission for this file, so that is also indicated. And also date, time, and the user identification, right? So what type of security is there, so what type of access levels for different user categories, and also uh, the last modified time, last modified time and date, right? So the created date, those things will be also available. So information about these files are kept in the directory structure, which is maintained by the disk. So like a process, right? A process has a process control block, right? And file is also having a file control block. So it will have the necessary details to identify the file and which files are collaborating with this and how a file is stored inside the hard disk. So those are also available in the file control block. So we'll come back to that later on this lecture. So when it comes to file operations, so file is actually an abstract data type, right? So there can be different types, different specific file types, and generally a file can be created, and we can write to a file, we can read from a file, and we can reposition within the file, we can reposition the content within the file, or we can delete the file. So these are the basic operations of a file. So normally this is provided using the available application programs for the user, um, and the user will be able to do all these different operations by using the provided interfaces from the applications. So file types, as I mentioned earlier, can be vary based on the requirement of the users and also the user specialties and also the supported file types by the operating system, right? So executable files also differ from one operating system to the other. Some recognizes the executable files, some may not be recognized by other operating systems. And so these are some of the basic file types like executable files. Exe is the command for Windows, then bin in Linux, right? So objects are identified in different extensions. Source code again depends on the application and the programming language. And then we have batch file types, executable file type. So again, that would be differ based on different operating systems. So you can see there are different file types based on different applications, and the extensions will be also different based on the operating system. So the operating system will understand the file type by reading the file control block, what type of a file it is, and if it is recognizable, it will start the execution. So like this, there are many different file types, right? For example, when you take multimedia, right, images has large variety of file types like JPEG, GIF, PNG, and so like that there are many. And also when it comes to applications produces their native format as well as open formats, right? So when you take Photoshop or Audacity or let's say Movie Maker, Adobe Premiere, so like that there are many different types of applications. They provide their native version, that means including the source code. Also they provide certain cross-platform formats like JPEG, GIF, PNG, right, and MPEG, AVI, right, MP3. So like that they can provide cross-platform standards as well, right? So this is actually a small part of file systems and different file types and their extensions. There can be many, right? So access methods also differ. So the main two types of access methods would be sequential and direct access. In sequential access, it goes through a sequence, read, write, and it will reset. Again, it will read, write, reset. So that is the sequence. So when it comes to direct access, it's not like that. So we can skip and read n number of blocks and write n number of blocks. So it is called direct access. So operating systems, actually modern operating systems, it provides both sequential and direct access for the users. So in sequential access, uh, from the current position of the head. So we will discuss about different types of methods that we will be using to access files. So then you will understand this clearly. So if there's a particular position, when it is sequential access, it can go only forward and start read or write instructions. So at the end, it can come back, or else from the current position also, it can come back to the beginning, then start again the read write option, right? So a sequential access, a best way to give an example would be using a typewriter, right? So in a typewriter, you start typing, right? If you want to come back, you can come back to the beginning, right? And so there's no way to edit in between, right? So when it comes to direct access, it's not like that. So files are saved in the index, so it can access any file, right, and do the read write operations by using the index and navigating through it. So this is the popular method of accessing files today, because the available operating systems, they have multiple applications, so then they have large number of files in terms of data and executable files, various different types, right? So therefore, if it is going to be sequential access, it will take a long time to load all the necessary files to start execution. Therefore, the direct access method is heavily used. So this is by using an index, right? So in the index, you have the available identifiers as well as the file names, and easily it can do the operations. So directory structure is also very important, right? So how to manage the available files in a proper manner, and how to give access to files, how to manage the access control, authentication, and security wise, the directory structure plays a major role, right? So the directory structure, right, is available in the file system, right? So for a disk, there will be a file system. Then in the disk, you will see, later on I will explain how the disks are connected, the disks are structured. So in the disk, we have the information regarding the directory structure, and inside the directory, it has the necessary details about the file structure and also the files, right? So there'll be a collection of nodes containing the information about the files. So the directories will be connected to the files, right? So the managing of directories and files in a proper manner depends on the file system that we use, and also depending on the directory structure that is used by the operating system. Right. So that is the directory structure. So when it comes to physical storage, then we should look into the disk structure, right? So how the disk is being structured. So what do you mean by a disk? So this is on the secondary storage, right? So in normal usage, we talk about partitions, right? So partitions can be used in two ways. One is a disk can be partitioned into multiple multiple portions, right? So we call it as mini disks, right? So we can partition a hard disk. So we can save, let's say, software in one partition, and in another partition we can store our files, and one partition to install the operating system, and like that, right? So the importance of partitioning, sometimes when a partition is malfunctioning, other partitions can be accessed, right, and can be used. So a partition, sometimes we call it as a slice, right? But when it comes to a physical disk, it will have a file system, right? So we will discuss about the file systems later on, and I will give you some important links to refer to as well. So a file system will be known as a volume, right? So a file system will have the configuration of what type of files are supported, what are the sizes that it will support, size of the disk, maximum size of the disk that it will support, and that depends on the file system and also the compatible file system for each operating system, right? So so a disk can be used as row without a file system. So without a file system also there can be a disk, right? And we can format a partition into a file system. That means formatting a hard disk or a partition means we will arrange the available partition into a proper file system that can be accessed by the operating system. So that is what we do, right? So when we partition and format using NTFS, that means we arrange the partition into the NTFS file format of FAT32 or in Linux ext3 or SAFS, right? So like that there are different uh, file systems, right? So yeah, so the each volume of the file system, right, will have a large amount of tracks, right? And then we'll see the structure of the disk separately in this chapter. So another important aspect that we will discuss later on regarding the RAID mechanism, right? So so this is also a very important aspect when it comes to managing multiple disks and important data, providing high fault tolerant and high availability uh, features, right? So we will discuss about RAID um, um, in the last part of this lecture. So RAID stands for redundant array of independent disks, right? So we can combine multiple disks into a single partition, or else we can have a single disk into multiple partitions. And by using RAID, we can protect the data. And there's a feature called high availability. That means when a particular part of a partition fails or a particular disk fails, still the system will be running based on the RAID mechanism we have, right? So we'll see what is RAID and what are the advantages later on. And yeah, so each of these partitions will have a table of contents. So that means how many directories are there, what are the directories, and then what are the files in each of these directories, and then the file system and the details about it, right? So those are very important when it comes to managing the data, right, in the secondary storage. So there are general purpose file systems like in Windows we use FAT32, NTFS. In Linux we have different file system like ext, RACFS, right? So there are certain special purpose file systems as well, right? So when it comes to having a swap partition, right? So in Linux we will use ext2, right? Because it is faster and also it will handle it cannot handle a large volume of data, right? So it has certain limitations, therefore it is much faster, right? So Windows also same thing when it comes to creating a virtual memory, right? So it will be having a special purpose file system. Right, so this is what I said. So partitioning can be used to partition a single disk, single physical disk into multiple partitions, or else partitioning can be used to combine multiple physical disks into a single directory structure. So that will represent as a single partition. So this is very much necessary, right? For both categories, like partitioning a single physical disk into multiple partitions. So that is what we do today, right? In modern user grade computers, when we have 1 TB hard disk or 2 TB hard disk, right, we partition it, right? So we will have our working directories and files in the office in one directory, and we use another directory to store, let's say, software, right? Software updates and other things. We'll use another partition, and another partition to store uh, the file system of the operating system, right? Like that. But when it comes to storing uh, large files, so this mainly happens when it comes to storing multimedia files, right? So when we have a large file uh, containing about more than 1 TB, let's say 1.2 TB of data, right? So one disk may not be enough. Then we need to combine two physical disks into one directory, right? And store the available files. So both are required. So the second category requires only when there are special situations. Other than that, normally what we do is we partition a single disk into multiple partitions. Right. So the perform tasks in operating system would be searching a file, right? So we can search a file using the available functionality. We can create a file. If we want, we can delete the file, right? So we can list down the directories, list down the files. We can see each directory and the associated files to it. We can rename, right? We can move a file from one directory to the other. And also we can traverse the file system with the available uh, utility programs that is provided by the operating system, right? So in Windows, we have the file system directly we can access, right? And we can search. So all these are possible in a very user-friendly manner. So modern operating systems provide these characteristics to end users by making the user-friendly interfaces. Right. Then some of the directory structures available in operating systems. So one of the primitive directory structures would be single directory for all users, right? So when you take MS-DOS, so it has this particular structure, a single directory, right? You can see here. So it is managed by a single layer, right? So we have only directories and the files. So there's a naming problem, right? So files and directories, we cannot have the same name, right? So the name for each of these directories should be different, and files also the same because it is in a single level. Therefore, the files also should have unique names, right? And also we cannot group. There are no user groups, file groups, and nothing. So when it comes to maintaining multiple users, it is not possible because there won't be any private data because everything will be shared with everyone, and there's a security problem as well, right? Security privacy problems as well. So although this is primitive, right, easy to manage because we can create a directory and create a file, and the files will not be recreated with the same file name in the system, right? But there are a lot of disadvantages. We cannot use the same file stored in different places. So there are no different places as well, right? So single directory structure, right? Single directory for all the users, and then cannot group, right? There are no user groups. There's also a problem in the security and isolation because all the users can access all the available directory and the files. Right. Then two-level directory structure. So this is better when you compare with single level directory structure. So two levels. The first level is master file directory, and the second level is user file directory, right? So one user will have its own directory, right? Therefore, the user can access the files using the available path name. Same name of a file can be given by different users because user data is isolated, right? User data is isolated. Therefore, that problem is sorted, and searching is also efficient because each user's directories are specified and it is being managed separately. Again, there won't be any user groups, right? So there are no user groups. You have multiple users but don't have any user groups. Their privileges are limited to their files and directories they have inside, so they cannot share any of these data between users because those are isolated. So in a way it is highly protected, but then when it comes to operational level, you cannot share files with other users. So then again there are certain restrictions and limitations. So when it comes to the tree structure, so this is what is available in most of these modern operating systems. So we have a higher level um, directories, then those are linked into lower level directories. Each can manage its own files. So files can be shared. Each user has different privileges to access different files, different directories, and users on top of it can be categorized and can be grouped. So user grouping is possible. Um, Isolation is also possible. A user can have its own have the own private folders, private directories, and private files. And also there will be common files that is provided by the operating system, and users can also share their files between each other, right? So users can be easily grouped into different categories. For example, normal users with normal privileges, and if there are certain other users like administrators or database administrators, web administrators, like that, they should have different privileges. So those can be also easily managed group wise. So this is the most popular directory structure that is available today, right? So in Windows, Linux, they also have a similar structure, right? So there can be slight differences in the structure based on privileges and whether it's a single root structure or any other way of dividing the directories, right? So there can be differences, but generally it provides the security for users to have private data, common applications, sometimes private applications as well, and they can share data. And also the operating system is capable of maintaining user groups, right, to provide the access control efficiently. So tree structured directories has lot of advantages. Efficient searching, right? So we can search on a directory, or we can go inside to a subdirectory and search for a particular file. So a path will be available, right? So we can refer to a particular a file by using logical or the physical path of a file. And then grouping is there. We can group files, group folders, provide access, restrict facilities, and also we can give access control for user groups in a higher level, right? So so yeah, so directories are also visible, right, by using the available commands, right, inside the operating system. Right, so these are some of the commands. You have already tried this, right, in Linux practicals. So creating a file, removing a directory, cascaded removal as well, right? So we can remove a file and all we can remove all the directories as well as the files inside, right? We can create subdirectories, right? And manage them properly, assign privileges, right? So all are possible. Right. So this is also very important when it comes to access control, right? So in Microsoft, it is not visible like this, but visible in a different way, right? So it is visible like this in Microsoft, right? So in Windows version, so each of these user groups, administrators or guests or the normal users, they will have different access, as you can see here, right? So what type of access they have for different files. So this can be initiated and assigned for application or a particular file, right? So this is possible. So this is how it looks like in Windows, but in Linux, in modern Linux operating system, that is also possible. But you from the command prompt also we can do it very effectively, right? So the owner group and the public access will be available, right? So there are two commands, right? Chmod and chown. I think you have used both of them, right? So the owner of a file will have the full access. That means read, write, and execution, right? So when it comes to read, write, and execution permission, if all three are available, it will be visible like this, right? 111, right? So the owner's access would be 7. Group access, group will have read, write permission, but not the executable permission, right? So therefore, it would be given as 110. So this is given in base 2. Therefore, this would be 4 plus 2, the answer is 6, right? So group access would be 6. Then public access, public, if the file is executable, will have the executable rights. So in right, so when it comes to a particular file, the owner will have full access, right? And the group, the user group of the owner will have read, write, and any user who uses the system will have the executable permission in this given example. So we can restrict, right? So we can restrict into 755, right? So when it comes to 755, owner will have the highest access. Then the group will have read and executable access, and the public, that means any user who logs in can read and execute a file, right? So also when it comes to a user is assigned to a group, right? So whether it's administrators or normal available users, they have their own privileges to execute and access certain applications in different levels. Right. So in a Linux system, this is how it is visible to you, right? So a directory, the first in the first column, it indicates whether it's a directory or a file, If it is a directory, it will be indicated by D. If not, it's a file indicated by a dash, right, or hyphen, right? And then permission for the owner. Next three will be permission for the group of the owner. Last three will be for any user in the system, any other user in the system, right? So you can see the owner will normally have the read, write, and executable privileges, right? And sometimes a group will also have the read, write, executable permissions, and the end users or any other user sometimes may not have any permission, right? And you can see this different access control that is provided, right? So sometimes the group owner will have read write but not executable, so it is not may not be an executable file, right? So then it has read privileges only for the group of the user. Then any person who's accessing the file will have only the read access, right? So like that, the operating system can decide which users will be given which privileges and what type of access levels will be given, right, and indicate them properly. So either it is a graphical user interface or the command prompt, the the administrators or the super users of the system where they can do any change will be capable of modifying this access control, right, at any time. Right. So how these file systems are implemented, another important aspect, right? So a boot sector is also a part of the operating system, right? So that is also a partition, right? So in Linux also it is available, in Windows also it's available. Windows it is hidden, right? So Linux, if it is not created separately, it will be inside the file structure, right? Sometimes it is visible. That means if when you create a separate boot partition, and it would be easier to manage the available boot sector, right? So the boot sector will have a boot control block that indicates the available instructions and what type of file system is being used. Then the volume control block for each partition, it is being managed by its own file system, right, which are consistent with the number of directories and number of files. So that will be managed by the volume control block for each partition, right? So each volume will have number of directories and each directory will have number of files. So directory will be managed by number of files. So that means when it comes to a directory, we'll have the set of organized files. So for each file belongs to a directory, right? And the collection of directories will be indexed in the volume control blocks. And each file will have a file control block, right, which contains the necessary information regarding a file, right? So that is the structure of a modern computer, right? So when it comes to a process will have a process control block which has the characteristic of that particular process, right? Can you remember we have the data section, heap, right, and to save global variables, local variables, we have data, files associated. So all this will be available in the process control block. We call it as a PCB. So here for a file, we have a FCB, right? File control block, right? So it has the necessary files, the necessary characteristics, of that particular file, right? So these are the available parameters inside the file control block. We have file permissions, file dates, right? So that means who created the file, who accessed the file, what type of modifications are done, and like that. So file permission, who's the owner, owner's permission, read write permission for the group, and also for any user, what is the permission. So those will be available. And then the file owner, file group, access levels, then the file size, right? If the file is associated with any other files, so this particular file control block will have the links for each of those connected or associated files.